As the global backlash against Russia's invasion of Ukraine grows, the balance in East Asia is being quietly but radically shaken. On the one hand, North Korea is drawing attention by sending troops and providing armed support to Moscow. China, on the other hand, remains an important ally of both Russia and North Korea, but the growing rapprochement between the two neighbors is causing unease in Beijing. Xi Jinping's silence on the issue only confirms this uneasiness. So why is there no trilateral authoritarian alliance? Or why is China diplomatically distancing itself from the North Korea-Russia front? What geopolitical calculations does this reflect? Let us seek answers to these questions. The military relationship between Russia and North Korea is well known. Kim Jong-un has sent more than 11,000 soldiers to Moscow. In return, Putin seems ready to provide North Korea with a wide range of support, from modern fighter jets to military technology. This win-win deal has alarmed the rest of the world. If Russia's technical support is added to Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions, North Korea's missile and weapons programs could become even more powerful. Western public opinion is alarmed by this prospect, but there is another player that is at least as worried as the West, China. China has historically been North Korea's main supporter and only major friend. For decades, Pyongyang has been able to partially escape economic and diplomatic isolation thanks to its alliance with Beijing. Likewise, Russia is a critical partner for China in what Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin have described as a borderless partnership. China has provided Russia with economic, especially energy, and diplomatic support. But now, the arms deals, the Joint Defense Pact, and the military technical cooperation between North Korea and Russia make Beijing uneasy. This is because Xi Jinping realizes that such a rapprochement between Putin and Kim Jong-un could diminish his own influence, and that Pyongyang could even come to rely more and more on Moscow, sending the message that it does not need China. Silence or low-profile reactions may be a typical Chinese diplomatic reflex. Beijing wants to fine-tune its diplomacy without appearing too aggressive on a global scale. While Xi has positioned state power against Washington and its allies, he does not want to appear as part of a trilateral authoritarian axis, since the defense pact between North Korea and Russia reinforces precisely this image. Beijing is content to stay on the sidelines for now and say, that's their business. However, Beijing is concerned about the turmoil this development could cause in the region. North Korea's strengthening of its nuclear and missile capabilities could push South Korea to develop nuclear weapons in a panic. That would mean a new nuclear power on China's doorstep. Likewise, US-Japan-South Korea cooperation could strengthen, and Washington could increase its military presence in the Asia-Pacific. None of this is in China's interest. Moreover, Russia's close ties with North Korea could weaken Beijing's influence over Russia. Xi has been limited or ambivalent in providing munitions and weapons to Russia. For his part, Putin, increasingly cornered in the war in Ukraine, is knocking on Pyongyang's door and making promises to satisfy North Korea. This suggests to China, is my help not enough, or does Russia want to cut me out? It is possible that Putin is using Pyongyang as leverage to push Beijing's policies. For example, by expanding its military support to North Korea, Russia could weaken China's role as a regional playmaker and send a message. Either you support me, or I will pull North Korea further into my orbit and disrupt your strategic calculations. While this may sound a bit ambitious, the Kremlin's desperation suggests such diplomatic maneuvers. On the Chinese side, the most disturbing scenario is that North Korea could obtain nuclear or missile technology transfers from Russia. Kim Jong-un already possesses nuclear weapons and has repeatedly tested short to medium-range missiles. Advanced technology from Russia could rapidly advance intercontinental ballistic missile capabilities. This is a headache not only for the US but also for China. Because North Korea has historically been dependent on China, Beijing has been able to easily influence Pyongyang's policies. A North Korea that becomes an autonomous nuclear power and relies on Russian technical assistance could move out of Beijing's shadow and into a more independent, and perhaps more dangerous, direction. China certainly does not want that because a militant Kim Jong-un could one day get involved in a fight across the border and escalate the crisis with the United States. This would destabilize the region. Even if Beijing says, calm down, don't create nuclear tensions, it may not be listened to. The Russia-North Korea rapprochement is also economically problematic for Beijing. Moscow, isolated by sanctions, could demand tens of thousands of troops or munitions from Pyongyang in exchange for nuclear warheads. However, if North Korea starts to rely on Russia for energy or food, this would further distance Pyongyang from Beijing. China usually controls the isolated North Korea with its economic aid card. If Russia now assumes this role, Beijing's economic leverage will be weakened. Moreover, Xi does not want to upset the balance on the Korean peninsula. He is trying to steer a delicate course between not pushing South Korea further into America's embrace and not encouraging North Korea too much. That's why Xi Jinping seems to be keeping quiet on the stage and watching the developments. Instead of addressing Pyongyang with the words, friendly neighboring country, Beijing is showing diplomatic warmth by simply saying, we have traditional relations. These nuances show that China is not happy with Kim Jong-un's rapprochement with Russia. On the one hand, there is a sense of, we will not allow North Korea to completely shift to the Russian axis, but Beijing does not want to put direct pressure on Russia. After all, Beijing does not want to drive a wedge between itself and Putin, whom it continues to see as a common strategic rival to the United States. It is also not in China's interest to overly corner Russia, which is struggling with sanctions. Therefore, Xi is trying to manage this tension quietly but carefully. Kim Jong-un is also playing a smart game here. By escalating good relations with Moscow, he's sending a message to China. I'm not only dependent on you. Russia can also supply me with weapons and protect my interests. In this way, he can try to extract more concessions or support from Beijing. A deep partnership with Russia is North Korea's card to weaken China's hand. But this tactic is also risky because if she gets angry and cuts off aid, the North Korean economy would immediately hit a dead end. But if Kim tries to take steps that China does not approve of in exchange for Russia offering him new weapons technology, regional turmoil will escalate. China could not avoid this even if it wanted to because it would create a Kim Jong-un it could not control. The US and the West are closely monitoring this dynamic. The nuclear and missile technology North Korea receives in exchange for sending troops and ammunition to Russia is raising security concerns in Asia. South Korea and Japan are also taking note of China's quiet and deep approach. Beijing is not happy with the Russia-North Korea rapprochement, but it is reluctant to confront it openly. The US side may want to exploit this contradiction to force China to put pressure on Russia. Indeed, some US officials say that China is very uncomfortable with this military alliance between Russia and North Korea and that they have discussed this with their Chinese counterparts. Western experts have also warned Beijing about the nuclear cooperation between Russia and North Korea, stressing that it could turn into a nuclear chain reaction in Asia if South Korea also decides to develop nuclear weapons. China could find itself in a much more complex security environment. Behind the scenes, trade and technology transfers are at play. While China does not provide open support to Russia to the extent of circumventing Western sanctions, the flow of dual-use goods to Russia has not gone unnoticed. But Russia may want more advanced military equipment, and Beijing is wary that it cannot afford a complete break with the US and Europe. So, Putin is trying to get from North Korea what he cannot get from Beijing, at who knows what price. Kim Jong-un, on the other hand, thinks he can make himself an even bigger nuclear power with the technologies he will import from Russia. This is China's nightmare scenario. If North Korea slips out of its hands and cooperates with Russia on nuclear matters, then the whole region will be in the line of fire. In short, Xi's silence is both a psychological blow to Putin and Kim and a signal to them to wait for Beijing's reaction. Xi is trying to show that he stands by Russia but keeps his distance from the North Korea-Russia duo without jeopardizing his position and without being too embarrassed in the international arena. Silence can sometimes be the most powerful weapon. Kim and Putin may feel obliged to act more loudly, but Xi is looking for opportunities with a watch-and-see policy. This reinforces China's precious isolation and leaves Russia and North Korea locked together. On the other hand, it is also risky to completely cut the strings in such a trilateral relationship. In the coming period, we may see some mild reactions from Beijing, such as symbolic moves regarding the level of visits to Kim or warnings to Russia not to give nuclear technology to North Korea. Of course, as Xi pursues this strategy, he is also struggling with his own economic and political problems. Growing domestic pressures, an aging population, slowing growth, and the expansion of the US military presence in the Asia-Pacific are all weighing on him. If North Korea-Russia cooperation reinforces the perception of an axis of authoritarianism stretching from the Middle East to Europe, the Western attitude towards China could harden. This is precisely why Xi is choosing to buy time through diplomatic maneuvers without making an appearance. In the meantime, the West is trying to block any wing that might support Russia, but there are limits to sanctions. In the end, it may be an exaggeration to say that the rapprochement between Kim and Putin is undermining Xi's stance, but Beijing is certainly not happy. However, China does not seem willing to pound the table just yet. Let Russia and North Korea play their game, while China focuses on the bigger picture. All eyes are now on Beijing's next diplomatic step. Will Xi send a message by abandoning the phrase, brotherly country, or will he bring back the emphasis on friendly neighbor between him and Kim? Russia, too, may have to choose whether to avoid offending Beijing or to strengthen its front with Kim's help. What do you think? Is China's silence a strategic ploy or desperation? Is the Russia-North Korea alliance undermining China's long-term plans? We look forward to your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like our video. In the next podcast, we will discuss what military technology Kim Jong-un can wrest from Moscow and how this will affect the balance in the region. China and North Korea have had a 75-year connection, with the two communist republics forging a nexus in Northeast Asia early after their foundation following World War II. While the two countries' relationship has remained mostly stable, there have been continual conflicts and mutual distrust. Many commentators believe that North Korea is now more of a burden than a helpful ally to China. China has frequently had to balance its interests with North Korea, the primary one being to maintain stability. Given Pyongyang's significant expansion of its missile and nuclear programs during the early 2000s, the US and its East Asian allies, particularly Japan and South Korea, have become increasingly concerned about these dangers. North Korea has strengthened military connections with Russia in recent years as part of its fight against Ukraine, raising fresh concerns for both the US and China. The North Korean wing ignored China's objections and sent troops to Russia. This disrupted the entire balance between Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. The North Korean side has been obtaining war technology from Russia, presumably in exchange for troop supplies, in order to blockade the South and conduct further missile launches. However, Pyongyang has forgotten one vital aspect: without China, North Korea's economy could collapse. We will now examine this crucial scenario in further detail, focusing on the economic and socio-political consequences of North Korea's collusion with Russia and its games behind China's back, for the Pyongyang dictatorship and its populace. China's economic help is vital for North Korea, which is still one of the world's poorest and most isolated countries and has faced tighter international sanctions in recent years. Experts believe China intends to keep North Korea economically reliant. Beijing has been Pyongyang's major trading partner for over 2 decades, accounting for approximately 98% of North Korea's reported total imports and exports in 2023. Beijing also provides Pyongyang with direct help, primarily in the form of food and energy. North Korea has repeatedly experienced severe droughts and floods, threatening its food supply. According to Western analyses, famine decimated the country in the 1990s, killing more than 500,000 to 3 million people. Today, UN agencies estimate that more than 40% of North Korea's population, or over 11 million people, is malnourished. North Korea's self-imposed isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified food insecurity and health difficulties. In 2022, at the height of the pandemic, Kim turned down vaccine offers from the UN-backed COVAX effort in China. However, North Korea released vaccines later that year, and analysts believe China was the provider. China also increased its physical contacts with North Korea. In 2015, it inaugurated a bulk cargo and container shipping route to increase North Korea's coal exports to China, as well as a high-speed rail line connecting the Chinese border city of Dandong to Shenyang, the provincial capital of Liaoning Province in China's northeast. The Guomenlin Border Commercial Zone in Dandong was established the same year with the goal of fostering bilateral economic exchanges. These exchanges deteriorated after North Korea closed its borders. As we've seen, Beijing has the resources to really put Pyongyang in trouble if North Korea chooses Russia over China. So, China is seen as the determining party. What are China's priorities on North Korea? China has overlapping and occasionally competing interests on the Korean peninsula. While China claims to want North Korea to denuclearize in order to avoid a regional arms race or war, it opposed penalties imposed in response to Pyongyang's missile testing regime in 2022. China regards stability on the Korean peninsula as its key goal. Unlike his predecessors, Xi's Korea strategy is centered on preventing the fall of the Kim regime and avoiding a regional war that could jeopardize China's security interests. At the same time, his backing for North Korea, a one-party authoritarian state, strengthens the geopolitical buffer between China and South Korea, a pluralist democracy and U.S. treaty partner with around 20,500 troops. Pyongyang, for its part, strongly supports the One China policy in Taiwan and Hong Kong, citing Beijing's treatment of Uyghurs and other minorities in Xinjiang as a notable human rights triumph. Despite this, China has long believed that North Korea's reliance on nuclear weapons is destabilizing to the area, but denuclearization cannot be achieved in the short term. While China demands both peace and denuclearization, it ignores calls from the US and its allies to utilize its influence over North Korea to advocate for denuclearization. Chinese analysts perceive North Korea's nuclear developments as a response to US conflicts in the region, and they urge the US to mend relations with North Korea in order to facilitate denuclearization discussions. By collaborating with Russia, North Korea risks losing China's assistance. Kim Jong-un may eventually be left alone to face the Western alliance without China. On the other side, China wishes to restrict the flow of irregular migrants and refugees from North Korea, particularly as the region experiences extreme weather and natural disasters caused by climate change. Unofficial estimates of North Korean defectors in China range from 50,000 to 200,000. Separate sources say that the administration has dispatched up to 40,000 North Korean people to work in Chinese companies to earn revenue for the country. Many North Koreans flee through China before traveling on to other Asian countries, notably South Korea. Human rights groups have repeatedly condemned China's return of North Koreans. However, Kim Jong-un's intensified border restrictions have considerably reduced the number of defectors. If defections resume, China may impose greater measures to defend its geopolitical order. If North Korea, which has reinforced its connections with Russia, loses China's backing in this regard, defectors may flee to other destinations through China. Even worse for Pyongyang is the military situation. China and North Korea signed a mutual defense treaty in 1961, committing each to give military aid to the other in the event of an attack. This partnership is Beijing's only formal security pledge, and China has already stated that it will defend North Korea if the United States or South Korea attack first. However, Beijing has hinted that if Pyongyang initiates hostilities, its treaty responsibilities would be waived and Beijing would remain neutral. The defense treaty has never come up. However, Kim Jong-un's alliance with Putin will encourage Beijing's leader, Xi Jinping, to pursue more impartial policies. This would mean Pyongyang would lose Beijing's military support in the event of a battle between North and South Korea. Washington and its allies would undoubtedly assist Seoul. However, Pyongyang's failure to receive weapons or other military resources from Beijing in such a situation might result in a devastating defeat for North Korea. With North Korea becoming more aggressive with South Korea, such a scenario is possible. Pyongyang abandoned decades-long reunification attempts with Seoul in early 2024 and rewrote its constitution, designating the South as an enemy state. In response, China's foreign ministry declared that it has always supported the improvement of inter-Korean relations. China, Japan, and South Korea had a trilateral summit in May 2024, the first in almost 4 years. With China out of the picture, North Korea will be left to rely solely on Russia, and that's not enough for Kim, analysts say. China wants to preserve stable relations with the United States and Europe and avoid being perceived as part of a triple axis alongside North Korea and Russia. The stated U.S. policy toward North Korea is complete denuclearization in order to preserve peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula. If China adopts a policy more aligned with the U.S. on this subject, the cards will most likely be reshuffled in the region. When that day comes, Kim Jong-un is likely to face the repercussions of standing with Putin rather than listening to Xi Jinping in order to threaten South Korea, the West, and even the entire globe. Thank you for watching.